A black boy was rushing home after a long shift. On the subway platform he noticed an elderly woman dressed far too elegantly, her face pale, sweat beading on her forehead. Her trembling hands clung to a steel pole as she struggled to reach a bench, then suddenly she collapsed. Panicked, he ran to her side, helped her sit up, and gave her water to drink. What he didn't know was that the woman he had just saved was no ordinary person. She was a billionaire, and she would change his life forever. Before we dive into the full story, tell me where you're watching from and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more stories of kindness every day. The metro station at Gallery Place was suffocating. 5:47 on a Thursday evening, and the platform was packed wall to wall with commuters who just wanted to go home. The announcement crackled through speakers. "We're experiencing technical difficulties. Your train will arrive shortly. We apologize for the delay." Nobody apologized back. They just sighed, checked phones, shuffled impatiently. The air smelled like sweat and frustration, and the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from a long day in Washington, D.C. In the middle of the crowd stood a woman who didn't belong. 71 years old, wearing an expensive coat and carrying a leather handbag that probably cost more than most people on this platform made in a month. Her posture said power, but her face told a different story. Pale, drawn, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool underground air. Margaret Whitmore gripped the steel pole with both hands. Her fingers trembled. She blinked hard, trying to focus, but the platform kept tilting. When had she last eaten? This morning? Yesterday? The board meeting felt like it happened in another lifetime. A businessman in a suit glanced at her, then looked away quickly. A teenager with headphones walked past without seeing her. A woman pulling a rolling suitcase adjusted her path to avoid getting too close. Margaret's vision blurred at the edges. Her heart was doing something wrong, skipping and racing. She tried to take a breath, but it came shallow and quick. The pole felt slippery under her palms. Or maybe her palms were slippery. She couldn't tell. She took a step toward the bench. But her legs didn't cooperate the way they should. The floor seemed farther away than it had been a moment ago. A few people noticed. One pulled out a phone and started recording. Another frowned, annoyed that she was taking up space in the middle of the flow of foot traffic. A man muttered something about drunks and kept walking. Nobody stopped. Margaret's knees buckled. Across the platform, standing near the edge with a worn backpack slung over one shoulder, was Ethan Brooks, 15 years old, tired from a shift at the garage, worried about getting home to his grandmother. He'd been checking his phone, calculating whether he could catch the next train or if he should just walk to save the fare. He looked up and saw the woman falling. He saw the businessman turn away. The teenager walk past, the woman with the suitcase step around. He saw a dozen people notice and choose to keep moving. Ethan thought about his grandmother waiting at home, about the dinner he hadn't started, about the pills he needed to count out, about everything that would be harder if he was late. Then he moved. He pushed through the crowd, dropping his backpack, reaching the woman just as her knees gave out completely. His hand caught her arm. His other arm went around her back. He guided her down to sit on the cold platform floor because there was no bench close enough. "Ma'am," he said. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened but didn't focus. She tried to speak. The words came out wrong, slurred and scattered. "Someone call 911. Ethan called out to the crowd. Nobody moved. Faces turned toward him, then away. The woman with the phone kept recording. "Please," Ethan said, louder. "Someone call for help." "No signal down here," someone said. Ethan looked at the woman in his arms. She was conscious but fading. Pale skin, cold sweat, shallow breathing. He'd seen these signs before, once, when his grandmother had skipped too many meals trying to save grocery money. "Does anyone have juice?" he called out. "Soda? Anything with sugar?" The crowd shuffled. Some people put in earbuds. Some checked their watches. The train was coming eventually, and they didn't want to miss it. Then a woman about 10 feet away held up a bottle of orange juice. "It's not opened yet." "Thank you." Ethan took it, unscrewed the cap with shaking hands and held it to Margaret's lips. Small sips, just a little. She drank. A swallow, then another. Some color started coming back to her face. "That's good," Ethan said quietly. "Keep breathing, slow and steady. Around them the platform continued its chaos. People pushed past. Phones glowed. Conversations continued. The world kept spinning, while Ethan held a stranger and tried to keep her alive. Margaret's eyes focused on him, blue and intelligent, clearing now. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't apologize, just rest. You don't have to. But I'm here," Ethan said simply. Margaret stared at him. This thin boy with dark circles under his eyes and worn clothes and hands that were too rough for someone so young. He'd stopped when everyone else walked past. He'd stayed when he could have left. He'd helped when help wasn't convenient. The train finally arrived with a screech of brakes. Doors opened. The crowd surged forward, eager to claim seats. Some people glanced back at Ethan and Margaret on the floor. Most didn't. Ethan helped Margaret to her feet slowly. "Can you stand?" "I think so. Let's get you to a bench, away from the crowd." He guided her off the train platform to a bench in the corridor. The station was cooler here, less oppressive. She sat down heavily and put her head in her hands. The whole platform kept moving. Trains came and went. People rushed past. And on a cold metal bench in a corner of the station, a 15-year-old boy stayed with a 71-year-old woman because nobody else would. "What's your name?" Margaret asked when she could speak clearly again. "Ethan, thank you, Ethan." She looked at him, really looked. Most people just walked past. "I know. Doesn't that make you angry?" Ethan thought about it. People are scared, or busy, or they think someone else will help. But if everyone thinks that way, nobody helps. Margaret felt tears sting her eyes. "How old are you?" 15. 15. She shook her head. "When I was 15, I only thought about myself." "I doubt that. You don't know me. I know you're sitting here talking to me instead of being angry. I got involved. That says something." A metro security officer approached. "Everything all right here?" "She had a dizzy spell," Ethan explained. "Low blood sugar, I think. She's better now." "Ma'am, do you need medical attention?" "No thank you. This young man took excellent care of me." The officer nodded and moved on. Margaret pulled out her phone and made a call. "James, I need you to pick me up at Gallery Place Metro. Right away." She listened. "I'm fine. Just send the car." She hung up and looked at Ethan. "My driver will be here in 10 minutes. Can you wait with me?" "Of course." They sat in silence while the station hummed around them. Finally Margaret asked, "You were in a hurry?" "Someone's waiting for you. My grandmother. She'll worry." "Yeah." Ethan texted her, "Helped someone who got sick on the metro. On my way soon." The response came immediately. "Is the person okay?" "Yes. She's okay now." "Good boy. Come home safe." Margaret noticed him smile at his phone. "She sounds wonderful." "She is. What about your parents?" Ethan hesitated. "My dad died 4 years ago. Work accident. My mom's been gone about 2 years. We don't know where she is." Margaret's heart cracked. "I'm so sorry." "It's okay. We manage." "No, it's not okay. A 15-year-old shouldn't have to manage. Someone has to." A black SUV pulled up outside. A man in a suit rushed over. "Miss Whitmore." "I'm fine, James. This is Ethan. He helped me." James looked at Ethan with profound relief. "Thank you, son." Margaret stood slowly, testing her balance. She opened her purse and pulled out her wallet. "Let me give you something." "No," Ethan said quickly. "I don't want money. Please, you spent your time." "It's not about time. It's just what you're supposed to do." Margaret paused, wallet open. Inside were several $100 bills. She watched Ethan's eyes flicker to them, then away. "If I take money," Ethan said quietly, "then I wasn't helping. I was just working. And this wasn't work." Margaret felt tears she couldn't hold back. She closed her wallet. "At least let me drive you home." Ethan thought about his grandmother, about how tired he was, about the 40-minute walk that still waited. "Okay, thank you." In the SUV he gave his address in East Baltimore. Margaret's face didn't change, but he saw recognition there. She knew it was a rough neighborhood. When they pulled up to his building, Ethan thanked her and got out. He climbed the 5 flights of stairs because the elevator had been broken for 3 years. His grandmother was waiting at the door. She pulled him into a hug. "You scared me." "I'm sorry. There was a lady who needed help." Of course you helped. Ruth pulled back and looked at him with her twisted arthritic fingers gentle on his face. That's who you are. I know. Your daddy would be so proud. Ethan nodded and went to make dinner from what little they had. He didn't know that in the SUV pulling away from the curb, Margaret Whitmore was making a phone call that would change everything. The whole station had walked past. Only one boy had stopped. Ethan had known something was wrong the moment he saw her. The way she gripped the pole too tightly. The way her eyes couldn't quite focus. The way she swayed even though the train hadn't arrived yet. He'd been standing there thinking about home. About his grandmother Ruth waiting in their 5th-floor apartment. Probably in pain from her rheumatoid arthritis. Probably worrying about where he was. About the dinner he hadn't started cooking. About the medications he needed to count out and organize for the evening dose. About the bills stacked on the kitchen table that somehow never seemed to shrink no matter how many hours he worked at the garage. He'd been thinking about all of that when he saw the woman start to fall, and in that moment, 3 choices had appeared in his mind with perfect clarity. Choice 1, keep walking. Let someone else handle it. He had his own problems, his own family to take care of. Nobody would blame him for not getting involved. He was just a kid. It wasn't his responsibility. Choice 2, call for help and move on. Flag down a metro employee. Point out the woman who needed assistance. Let the trained professionals handle it. That was the smart thing to do. The safe thing. Choice 3, stay, help directly. Miss his train. Be late getting home. Risk his grandmother worrying herself sick. Risk being late for his next shift at the garage. Risk everything for a stranger. The choices had been there for maybe 2 seconds. Then his body made the decision before his mind could catch up. He moved. Now he was kneeling on the cold platform floor, one arm supporting the woman's weight, the other holding the bottle of orange juice to her lips. His backpack lay forgotten near the yellow safety line. His phone buzzed in his pocket with texts from his grandmother. Around him the crowd flowed past like water around a stone. Small sips, he said again. That's good. You're doing good. The woman's name was Margaret. She'd told him that much. She was 71 years old. She'd been walking and hadn't eaten since morning. Classic signs of low blood sugar, maybe complicated by stress or medication. He'd learned about it in health class last semester. More importantly, he'd seen it before when his grandmother tried to skip meals to save money for his school supplies. You don't have to do this, Margaret said. Her voice was stronger now but still shaky. You were going somewhere. I'm exactly where I need to be, Ethan said. Your grandmother will understand. You could miss your train. There'll be another train. Margaret looked at him with something like wonder. Why did you stop? Everyone else just walked past. Ethan thought about his father. Michael Brooks had died 4 years ago when a forklift malfunctioned at the warehouse where he worked. The accident happened because someone hadn't followed safety protocols. Someone had taken a shortcut. Someone had walked past a problem and figured someone else would handle it. His father had bled out on a concrete floor while co-workers stood around unsure what to do. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. Ethan had been 11 years old when he learned that walking past someone who needs help can cost them everything. Because you needed help, he said simply. And I could help. That's all. That's not all, Margaret said. You chose to help. Choice is everything. The train arrived with a mechanical screech. Doors opened. People pushed on, fighting for seats. Ethan glanced at it, then back at Margaret. Can you stand? He asked. Let's move away from the platform. Get you somewhere quieter. I don't want to keep you. You're not keeping me. I'm choosing to stay. He helped her to her feet slowly, letting her set the pace. Her legs were steadier now, the sugar starting to work. They made their way to a bench in the corridor, away from the main flow of traffic. Margaret sat down with a sigh of relief. I'm such a fool, she said, walking out of my office like that. Not thinking, not eating. Everyone makes mistakes. Not at my age. I should know better. Age doesn't make you immune to being human. Margaret laughed, a sound that was half sob. You're very wise for 15. I just pay attention. Most people don't. They sat in silence for a moment. The station hummed around them. Announcements echoed off tile walls. Footsteps clattered on stairs. The city rushed past, indifferent to individual struggles. Can I ask you something? Margaret said. Sure. What were you rushing home to? Before you stopped, Ethan pulled out his phone and checked the time. 6:12. He told his grandmother he'd be home by 6. She'd be worried now, probably standing at the window watching the street even though her knees hurt when she stood too long. My grandmother, he said. She's 62. She has severe rheumatoid arthritis. Her hands and knees are pretty bad. I usually help her with dinner and her evening medications. And you're late because of me. I'm late because I chose to help you. That's different, is it? Yeah. If you made me late I'd resent you. But I chose this so I don't. Margaret studied him with those intelligent blue eyes. Your grandmother raised you well. She's raising me. Present tense. She's not done yet. Ethan smiled slightly. And yeah, she is. My dad did too before he died. What happened to him? Warehouse accident. Forklift malfunction. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm so sorry. Me too. But he taught me stuff before he died. Important stuff. Like what? Ethan thought about his father. About the way Michael Brooks had always stopped to help neighbors carry groceries. About how he'd fixed Mrs. Chen's leaking sink even though he'd worked a double shift that day. About how he told Ethan that character was what you did when nobody was watching and nobody would ever know. He taught me that the world doesn't owe you anything, Ethan said. But you owe the world everything. Every good thing you can do, you should do. Because we're all connected. What happens to one person affects everyone else, even if we can't see the connections. That's beautiful. That's just true. Margaret's phone buzzed. She checked it. My driver is outside. Good. You should get home. Eat something. Rest. Walk with me. I don't want to collapse again in front of my driver. He worries enough as it is. Of course. Ethan grabbed his backpack and walked with Margaret toward the exit. His phone buzzed again. His grandmother, he texted back quickly. Everything's okay. The lady is safe. Coming home now. At the SUV, Margaret paused. I need to give you something. A way to thank you. You don't need to thank me. But I want to. She opened her purse again. Please, just no money, Ethan said firmly. If you give me money, then what I did becomes a transaction. I don't want that. I helped because you needed help. That's all. You're remarkable, Margaret said, tears shining in her eyes. Truly remarkable. I'm just doing what anyone should do, but you're the only one who did. They stood there for a moment, the SUV idling, the city rushing past around them. At least let me drive you home, Margaret said. Please, that's not payment. That's just being kind in return. Ethan thought about the 40-minute walk, about his grandmother waiting, about how tired he was. Okay, he said. Thank you. In the SUV, he gave his address and watched Margaret's face. She didn't flinch when he said East Baltimore, didn't change expression when he mentioned the street name that everyone knew was in a rough area. She just nodded and told the driver to go. They didn't talk much on the ride. Ethan looked out the window at the familiar streets growing rougher, buildings growing older, prosperity giving way to survival. When they pulled up to his building, he saw Mrs. Chen peering out her second-floor window at the black SUV. Tomorrow everyone would be talking about this. Thank you again, Margaret said. Feel better, Ethan replied. Then he got out and climbed the 5 flights of stairs to home. His grandmother was waiting at the door, worry etched into every line of her face. She pulled him into a hug that hurt her twisted hands, but she didn't let go. You scared me half to death. I'm sorry, Grandma. There was a lady on the metro. She almost passed out. Nobody was helping her. Ruth pulled back and looked at him. Of course you helped. That's who you are. That's who your daddy raised you to be. I know. Was she okay? The lady? Yeah. I got her some juice. Stayed with her until her driver came. She's okay now. Good. Good boy. Ruth squeezed his hand with her bent fingers. Your daddy would be so proud of you. Ethan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Then he went to the kitchen to start making dinner from the small amount of food they had. He'd made his choice on that metro platform. He'd chosen to stay when he could have left. He'd chosen to help when help was hard. He didn't know yet that the choice would echo forward through time, that the ripples spreading out from that single moment would reshape his entire life. He just knew he'd done the right thing, and for Ethan Brooks that was enough. After the sugar kicked in and the panic subsided, something strange happened. The chaos of the metro station seemed to fade into background noise. The crowd kept rushing past, trains kept arriving and departing, announcements kept echoing off tile walls. But on that cold metal bench in the corner, Ethan and Margaret existed in a pocket of unexpected stillness. Margaret's breathing had evened out, her hands had stopped shaking, her eyes had regained focus and that sharp intelligence Ethan had glimpsed even through her distress. She sat up straighter, smoothed her expensive coat, and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I need to know your name," she said. "Your full name." "Ethan Brooks." "Ethan Brooks," she repeated, like she was committing it to memory. "How old are you, Ethan?" 15. 15. She shook her head slowly. "When I was 15 I was thinking about dances and clothes and boys. Nothing that mattered. You're different." "I don't think I'm that different. You stopped when everyone else walked past. That's different." Ethan shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. Around them the station continued its evening rhythm. A homeless man pushed a shopping cart full of belongings. A mother struggled with a stroller and two small children. A businessman shouted into his phone about a missed meeting. "Why didn't you just keep walking?" Margaret asked. "Because you needed help. Lots of people need help. You can't help everyone." "No, but I can help when I'm standing right there watching someone fall." Margaret studied him with an intensity that made him want to look away. "Do you know what I do for a living, Ethan?" "No, ma'am. I work in urban development, infrastructure, buildings, bridges, water systems, things that make cities function." "That sounds important. It used to feel important." She looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly. "Now I'm not so sure." "Why not?" "Because today I walked out of a board meeting where we decided not to build a bridge in a poor neighborhood. $230,000. That's nothing to my company. But the board said it wasn't worth it. No return on investment." Her voice cracked slightly. "And I walked out because I couldn't stand to hear one more person talk about human lives like they were line items on a spreadsheet." Ethan didn't know what to say. He thought about his neighborhood, about the overpass with rusted railings that everyone knew was dangerous, about the storm drains that flooded every time it rained hard, about all the infrastructure that fell apart in places like his because nobody thought fixing it was worth the cost. "That bridge," he said quietly, "the one your board didn't want to build. People will get hurt without it, won't they?" "Probably, yes." "Then it matters, even if it doesn't make money. It matters." Margaret looked at him with something like wonder. "You understand that? At 15 years old, you understand what took me 40 years to figure out. I live in a neighborhood where stuff doesn't get fixed. You see it enough, you understand." "East Baltimore, how did you know?" "I've worked in this city for 4 decades. I know which neighborhoods get investment and which ones don't. I'm ashamed to say my company follows the money, not the need." They sat in silence for a moment. A metro employee walked past pushing a broom, creating small dust clouds in the harsh fluorescent light. "Can I tell you something?" Margaret said. "Something I haven't told anyone in a long time." "Okay. I had a daughter. Her name was Lena." Margaret's voice went soft. "She died 33 years ago in a car accident. On a bridge that should have been maintained but wasn't. The guardrails were missing. When her car hit ice there was nothing to stop it from going over the edge." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "I'm so sorry. I built my company after that. Told myself I'd make sure infrastructure was done right, that I'd prevent other families from losing what I lost. But somewhere along the way it stopped being about helping people and started being about building an empire, making money, expanding, growing." She wiped at her eyes. "I forgot why I started. Until today." "What happened today?" "I stood in that boardroom and realized I'd become exactly what I swore I'd never be. Someone who looked at a bridge that could save lives and saw only a bad investment." She turned to look at him directly. "And then I passed out on a metro platform and a 15-year-old boy reminded me what it means to actually give a damn about another human being." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do anything special." "Yes, you did. You saw someone who needed help and you helped. No hesitation. No calculation about what it would cost you or what you'd get in return. You just helped. Do you know how rare that is? It shouldn't be rare. It should be normal. It should be. But it's not." Margaret's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it then put it away. "My driver is getting impatient. I should go." "Yeah, you should get home." Eat something substantial. Rest. I will. She stood slowly, testing her balance. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Because you gave me something I didn't know I needed. You reminded me who I used to be, who I wanted to be. She paused. I won't forget this. Or you. I hope you feel better. I already do. Ethan watched her walk toward the exit, her posture straighter now, her steps more confident. At the doorway she turned back and looked at him one more time. Then she was gone, disappearing into a black SUV that pulled away into DC traffic. Ethan stood there for a moment in the empty corridor. He'd missed 2 trains now. His grandmother would be really worried. He needed to get home, but something felt different. The conversation with Margaret had stirred something in him. The way she talked about building things that mattered, about infrastructure that helped people instead of just making profit, about remembering why you started something instead of just focusing on how big it could grow. It reminded him of the notebook under his bed, the one full of drawings and calculations and designs for bridges and walkways and drainage systems, the one he looked at late at night and then hid away because dreams were dangerous and hope was expensive. He shook his head and headed for the platform. Another train would come soon. He'd get home, make dinner, count out his grandmother's pills, do his homework, go to sleep, wake up tomorrow and do it all again. That was his life. That was all his life could be. He told himself to forget about Margaret Whitmore and her talk of infrastructure and meaning and building things that mattered. He told himself to stop dreaming about impossible things. But as he boarded the next train and found a seat in the corner, he couldn't quite silence the small voice in his head that whispered, what if? What if he could actually become an engineer? What if he could actually design things that helped neighborhoods like his? What if his dreams weren't impossible after all? He pushed the thoughts away and looked out the window at the darkness of the tunnel rushing past. Dreams were dangerous. Hope was expensive. But for just a moment on that metro platform, talking to a stranger on a cold bench, both had felt achingly real. Ethan climbed the 5 flights of stairs to apartment 512, his legs burning by the 3rd floor. The elevator had been broken for 3 years. The building management company sent someone to look at it once, scribbled some notes on a clipboard and never came back. Nobody complained anymore. Complaining didn't fix anything in East Baltimore. The hallway on the 5th floor smelled like someone's cooking mixed with mildew and old cigarette smoke that had seeped into the walls over decades. Mrs. Chen's door was cracked open, and he heard her television playing a game show in Cantonese. Mr. Davis's apartment was quiet, which meant he was working the night shift at the hospital where he cleaned operating rooms. The Ramirez family was arguing about something, rapid Spanish punctuated by a baby crying. Ethan pulled out his key and opened the door to find his grandmother standing by the window, one hand pressed against the glass, the other braced against the wall for support. She turned when she heard him, relief flooding her face. Baby, thank God, I was so worried. I'm sorry, Grandma. I texted you. I know, but a text isn't the same as seeing you walk through that door. Ruth Brooks moved toward him slowly, each step deliberate. Her fingers were bent at wrong angles, the joints swollen and red from rheumatoid arthritis. At 62 she looked older. Pain did that to people. Ethan hugged her carefully, knowing too much pressure would hurt. I'm home now. Did you eat? I was waiting for you. Grandma, you need to eat on schedule. Your medication, I know, but I wasn't hungry without you here. Ethan went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. 1 egg left. The bread was gone. Half a carton of milk. Some wilted lettuce, a jar of peanut butter with maybe 2 spoonfuls left at the bottom. He should have stopped at the store on his way home. But stopping meant spending money they didn't have. He had $41 hidden in an envelope under his mattress. Rent was due in 4 days and they were still $37 short, even with what his grandmother would make from her next shift. I'll make us something, he said. There's not much there, baby. I'll figure it out. He scrambled the egg and split it between 2 plates, made toast from the last 2 slices of bread, divided the peanut butter carefully. It wasn't enough food, it wasn't nearly enough, but it was what they had. They sat at the small table, the same table where his father used to sit before the accident, before the forklift malfunction, before the funeral that the warehouse company paid for but didn't attend, before everything changed. Tell me about this woman you helped. Ruth said, picking at her food with fingers that couldn't quite grip the fork properly. She was older, maybe 70. She almost passed out on the metro platform. Low blood sugar, I think, and nobody else helped. No ma'am. Ruth reached across the table and squeezed his hand with her twisted fingers. Your daddy would be so proud. He raised you right. You're raising me, Ethan corrected gently. Present tense. We both are. Even though he's gone, he's still teaching you things. You got his heart, baby. His good heart. Ethan thought about his father. Michael Brooks had been a forklift operator at a logistics warehouse. Not a glamorous job, not a high-paying job, but honest work that put food on the table. He'd worked double shifts when Ethan's mother Jennifer started using after her car accident, when the opioids prescribed for her back pain stopped being about pain and started being about something darker. His father had tried to hold the family together, worked more hours, picked up extra shifts, tried to get Jennifer into treatment. But addiction was stronger than love, stronger than promises, stronger than a 6-year-old boy crying because his mother wouldn't wake up in the morning. Jennifer had left first emotionally, then physically. 2 years ago she'd walked out and never came back. No note, no explanation, just gone. Then the accident. 4 years ago this November. A forklift with faulty hydraulics. A load that shifted. Michael Brooks crushed against a warehouse wall while his co-workers stood around unsure what to do. Dead before the ambulance arrived. The company sent flowers to the funeral, paid for the cheapest casket, offered nothing else. No lawsuit, no settlement. The investigation concluded it was an accident. No one at fault, just bad luck. Bad luck that left an 11-year-old boy and a 58-year-old grandmother to figure out how to survive. You should go do your homework, Ruth said, breaking into his thoughts. I will. Let me clean up first. I can clean up, Grandma, your hands. Ethan gestured to her bent fingers. Let me do it, please. She nodded, knowing he was right, hating that she couldn't do simple things anymore. The arthritis had started 5 years ago, mild at first. Just some stiffness in the mornings, but it had progressed aggressively. Now her hands were deformed, her knees swollen, her pain constant. She worked part-time as a cleaner at a private medical center, on her knees scrubbing floors, on her feet wiping down examination tables, emptying trash bins full of medical waste. The irony wasn't lost on either of them, working at a medical facility while unable to afford proper treatment for her own condition. They'd applied for disability benefits, been put on a waiting list. That was 8 months ago. No word yet on when she might be approved. Until then she had to keep working, keep destroying her joints a little more each shift, keep pushing through pain that made her cry when she thought Ethan couldn't hear. After dinner, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his homework, pre-calculus problems that he solved quickly, English essay about themes in Of Mice and Men that he'd already outlined in his head. History reading about the New Deal that he'd finish before bed. School was easy for him. Too easy, some of his teachers said. Mr. Patterson in calculus kept talking about STEM programs and scholarships. Mrs. Rodriguez in English wrote notes on his papers about his analytical thinking. Coach Williams asked why he didn't try out for track with those long legs. They didn't understand. None of them understood. Scholarships required applications that cost money for test fees and college tours. STEM programs meant staying after school, which meant missing hours at the garage. Track practice happened exactly when he needed to be earning $40 a day hauling tires and wiping down engine parts. Dreams cost money, time cost money, hope cost money. And Ethan didn't have any money to spare. At 8:30 he counted out his grandmother's evening medications. 2 pills, carefully tracked on a calendar to make sure they didn't run out before payday. 1 bottle was getting low. 3 days of pills left. The refill would cost $63. He did the math again in his head. $41 saved. His grandmother's paycheck on Friday would cover $500 of the $750 rent. That left $250, which meant all of his savings plus whatever he made at the garage this week. If Frank gave him $40 a day for 5 days, that was $200. Plus 41 saved was $241. Still $9 short of rent, not counting the medication. The numbers never worked, no matter how many times he calculated, how many different ways he tried to arrange them. They never added up to enough. At 9 o'clock his grandmother went to bed. Ethan heard her moving slowly in her room, heard the soft sounds of pain she tried to hide. He waited until she was quiet, then pulled out the worn notebook from under his mattress. The pages were yellowed, the cover soft from handling. Inside were drawings he'd been working on for 2 years. Blueprints, calculations, designs. A pedestrian bridge over the railroad tracks that divided their neighborhood. Right now people had to walk 2 miles out of their way to cross safely, or risk running across the tracks. 3 people had been killed in the past 5 years. Ethan had designed a simple steel bridge with a gentle slope for wheelchair accessibility. LED lighting powered by solar panels. $200,000 to build, he estimated. Nothing for the city, everything for the neighborhood. A drainage system for the streets that flooded every heavy rain. The current storm drains were from the 1960s, too small for modern weather patterns. Clogged with debris, his design rerouted water flow, increased capacity, added catch basins at key points. $150,000, cheaper than the water damage caused by flooding every year. A redesigned intersection at Monument and Caroline, where a child had been hit by a car last year. Better lighting, clearer crosswalk markings, a pedestrian island in the middle. $80,000, less than the hospital bills from that accident. Every design had the same purpose: fix what hurt people in poor neighborhoods, fix what everyone else ignored. Ethan ran his fingers over the drawings. The calculations were sound. He'd checked them 3 times. The designs were functional, efficient, elegant in their simplicity. Professional work. The kind of work a real civil engineer would do. But it didn't matter. These drawings would stay in a notebook under his mattress. They'd never be built. They'd never help anyone. Because Ethan would never be a civil engineer. He'd work at the garage until he graduated high school, then he'd find a full-time job doing manual labor, and he'd take care of his grandmother until she died or until he couldn't anymore. That was reality. Everything else was fantasy. He closed the notebook and slid it back under the mattress. Then he lay down in the dark and stared at the water-stained ceiling, listening to the sounds of the building settling around him. Mrs. Chen's television. The Ramirez baby crying. Sirens outside. The distant rumble of trains on tracks that needed a bridge. Tomorrow he'd wake up at 4:55, make breakfast from nothing, count pills, walk 40 minutes to school, sit in class and pretend college was an option, work at the garage until his back ached, come home, make dinner from nothing, count pills, do homework, calculate bills that didn't add up, go to sleep, repeat. That was his life. That was all his life could be. He told himself to accept it, to stop looking at the notebook, to stop imagining a future that didn't exist. But somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he tried very hard to ignore, hope flickered like a candle that refused to go out no matter how hard he tried to snuff it. And that hope hurt worse than anything else. The notebook had started as a school assignment. 2 years ago, in 8th grade, Mr. Lee's social studies class had done a unit on urban planning. They'd studied how cities grew, how infrastructure shaped communities, how investment and neglect created vastly different neighborhoods within the same city. For the final project, students had to identify a problem in their community and propose a solution. Most kids had done simple things: a new playground, better lighting in the park, more trash cans on corners. Standard middle school projects completed with minimal effort for a decent grade. Ethan had designed a pedestrian bridge. He'd spent 2 weeks on it, measured distances using his phone's GPS, calculated load requirements based on population density, researched materials and construction methods, drew detailed schematics showing every support beam, every bolt, every calculation. Mr. Lee had stared at the 30-page proposal for a long time. Then he'd called Ethan up after class. "This is college-level work," he'd said. "Maybe graduate level. Where did you learn this?" "Library books, YouTube videos. I just figured it out." "You figured out structural engineering on your own, I guess." Mr. Lee had given him an A+ and written a note to the school counselor about gifted programming. The counselor had called Ethan in, talked about magnet schools and special programs. Ethan had smiled and nodded and never followed up, because magnet schools required transportation he couldn't afford, and time he didn't have. But the project had awakened something in him, a realization that he understood how things worked, how forces distributed through structures, how materials responded to stress, how design choices affected everyone who used a space. He'd kept the notebook and kept drawing. The pedestrian bridge design had evolved through dozens of iterations. He'd refined the slope angles for accessibility, added anti-slip surfacing, incorporated LED lighting that would make users feel safe at night, designed maintenance access points that wouldn't disrupt foot traffic, even planned the construction sequence to minimize disruption. It was beautiful work, functional and elegant, the kind of infrastructure that served people for decades while they never thought about it. The best kind of design, invisible in its competence, but it would never be built. Ethan knew this with crushing certainty. The city didn't build bridges in neighborhoods like his. They didn't invest in infrastructure that didn't generate revenue. Poor people's needs came last, if they came at all. Still, he couldn't stop himself from drawing, from calculating, from imagining. Late at night, when his grandmother was asleep and the building was as quiet as it ever got, Ethan would pull out the notebook and lose himself in design problems. How to route drainage around existing utility lines. How to reinforce a crumbling overpass without closing it completely. How to create safe crossing points at dangerous intersections. Every drawing was a love letter to his neighborhood, an apology for what it lacked, a promise he knew he couldn't keep. On Wednesday morning, Mr. Patterson caught him sketching in the margins of his calculus exam. "Ethan, can you stay after class?" His stomach dropped. "I have to get to work." 5 minutes, please." When the room emptied, Mr. Patterson sat on the edge of his desk. "What were you drawing during the exam?" "Nothing, just doodling." "Can I see?" Ethan hesitated, then handed over the exam paper. In the margins he'd sketched a quick elevation view of a retaining wall design for the embankment behind the school where erosion was causing problems. Mr. Patterson studied it. "This is structural engineering. It's just a doodle." "No, it's not." His teacher looked up. "Ethan, I talked to the STEM coordinator. There's a summer program at Johns Hopkins. Full scholarship, room and board included. They specifically work with students from underserved communities who show aptitude in engineering and architecture." "Mr. Patterson, just listen. This program, it's designed for students exactly like you. They understand family obligations. They have resources to help, social workers who can assist with elder care, stipends for families who lose income while students attend." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because my grandmother needs me. Because we're barely making rent. Because I have a job that pays our bills. Because I can't just leave for 6 weeks and hope everything works out." Mr. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. "What happens in a year when your grandmother can't work anymore? Have you thought about that?" "I think about it every day." "And your plan is what?" "Work at the garage forever. Support both of you on $40 a day. If that's what it takes, Ethan." His teacher's voice was gentle. "You have extraordinary talent. The kind of talent that comes along once in a career. You see problems other people miss and solve them elegantly. That's gift. You can't waste it." "It's not wasted if I use it to take care of my family." "But what about your future?" "My future is making sure she has her medication and a roof over her head. That's all the future I can afford to think about." He left before the conversation could continue, walked out of the classroom, down the hall through the front doors. The morning sun was bright and he squinted against it, feeling something tight and painful in his chest. Mr. Patterson was wrong. The guidance counselors were wrong. All the teachers who looked at his grades and test scores and told him he was special, they were all wrong. Talent didn't matter when you were poor. Potential didn't pay bills. Dreams were luxuries for people who could afford to fail. At the garage, Frank noticed his mood immediately. "Rough day at school." "Something like that." "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." Frank handed him a rag and pointed at a Honda Civic. "Bay 3 needs detailing. Take your time. Do it right." Ethan worked methodically, washing and waxing the car until it gleamed. His hands moved on autopilot while his mind churned. He thought about Mr. Patterson's offer, about the summer program at Johns Hopkins, about 6 weeks of studying engineering instead of hauling tires. He thought about his notebook under the bed, about the bridges and drainage systems and intersection redesigns that would never exist outside his imagination. He thought about his father, who'd worked double shifts and died for it. About his mother, who'd chosen drugs over her son. About his grandmother, whose hands twisted a little more each day while she scrubbed floors she could barely kneel on. And he thought about Margaret Whitmore, who'd said something yesterday that kept echoing in his head. I built my company to make sure infrastructure was done right, to prevent other families from losing what I lost. What would it be like to do that? To build things that actually help people, to design solutions to real problems instead of just sketching them in a notebook. What would it be like to be an engineer? The thought was so painful he had to stop moving. He leaned against the Honda, rag in hand, and felt tears sting his eyes. "Kid," Frank's voice came from behind him. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." Ethan straightened up, wiped his eyes, forced himself to keep working. "Just tired." "You're always tired. When's the last time you did something for yourself? Something fun?" "I don't have time for fun." "Everybody needs time for fun. You're 15 years old, you should be out causing trouble and chasing girls, not working 40-hour weeks at a garage." "I like working here. I like having you here. You're a good worker, but that's not the point." Frank came closer, his tattooed arms crossed. "I've been watching you for a year now. You show up on time, work hard, never complain. But you also never smile. Never talk about your friends, or your hobbies, or anything a normal teenager does. What are you running from?" "I'm not running from anything." "Then what are you running toward?" Ethan didn't have an answer for that. He finished the Honda and moved to the next car. Frank watched him for another moment, then shook his head and walked back to his office. That evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his grandmother while she ate the small dinner he'd made. His homework lay spread out before him, but he couldn't concentrate. "Something on your mind, baby?" Ruth asked. "Mr. Patterson wants me to apply to a summer program, engineering program at Johns Hopkins." "That sounds wonderful." "I can't go." "Why not?" "Because you need me here. Because we need the money from the garage. Because I can't just leave for 6 weeks. Ruth set down her fork with difficulty, her fingers struggling to release it. "Is that what you think? That you can't have a life because of me?" "That's not what I meant." "Yes it is. And baby, I need you to listen to me." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm 62 years old. I've lived my life, made my choices, good and bad. But you're 15. Your whole life is ahead of you. And I will not let you throw away your future to take care of me." "You're not throwing anything away. You're my grandmother. Taking care of you is what I'm supposed to do." "No, what you're supposed to do is become the person you're meant to be. Go to college, become an engineer, build the things you draw in that notebook you think I don't know about." Ethan's head snapped up. "How did you?" "I'm old, baby, not stupid. I've seen you pulling it out late at night, seen the way you look at bridges and drainage grates and intersections like you're solving puzzles." She squeezed his hand tighter. "Your daddy had dreams too. Wanted to be a long-haul trucker, see the country, but then your mama got pregnant and he did the right thing. Stayed here, took the warehouse job, gave up his dreams to take care of his family. That's what good men do." "Yes. And it killed him. Not just the accident, baby. The dream dying killed him years before that forklift did." Tears ran down Ruth's face. "I won't let you make the same choice. I won't let you sacrifice everything for me. But if I go to that program, who'll help you with dinner, with your medications, who'll make sure you're okay? I'll figure it out. I've been taking care of myself since before you were born. I can manage for 6 weeks." "Grandma, no. Listen to me. Your daddy didn't get to chase his dreams, but you can. And if you don't, if you stay here and work at that garage and watch your talent die because you're too afraid to leave me, then his death meant nothing. You understand? Nothing." Ethan felt tears spilling over. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of leaving you. Of what happens if something goes wrong while I'm gone. Of taking a chance and failing. Of everything." Ruth pulled him close, her twisted hands gentle on his face. "Being scared is okay, but letting fear run your life isn't. Your daddy taught you to be brave. So be brave. Apply to that program. See what happens. If you get in, we'll figure out the rest." "I don't know if I can." "You can. Because you're my grandson." "Eve, because you're Michael Brooks's son. Because you're stronger than you know." They held each other while the apartment settled around them. Outside, the city hummed with evening traffic. Inside, two people who'd lost almost everything tried to believe in a future that might be possible after all. Later that night, Ethan pulled out the notebook again. But this time he didn't just look at his drawings. This time he imagined them being real. He imagined standing on a bridge he'd designed, watching people cross safely. Imagined seeing a neighborhood transformed by infrastructure that worked. Imagined being the person who fixed what everyone else ignored. The dream hurt. Hope always hurt. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running from the pain and start running towards something better. He pulled out his laptop and typed Johns Hopkins Summer Engineering Program into the search bar. The application was due in 2 weeks. He took a deep breath and clicked Apply Now. Margaret Whitmore sat in her Georgetown townhouse that night, unable to sleep. Her housekeeper had left dinner in the refrigerator, but she had no appetite. Her assistant had sent emails requiring responses, but she couldn't focus. Her mind kept returning to the metro platform, to the boy with rough hands and an old jacket who'd stopped when everyone else walked past. Ethan Brooks. She'd thought about him all evening. Through the drive home, through the conversation with James about what had happened, through the phone call with her doctor who'd scolded her for skipping meals and working herself into a collapse, she kept seeing his face. The way he'd looked at her with concern but not pity. The way he'd held that orange juice bottle and talked her through drinking it. The way he'd refused money because taking it would have changed what he'd done into a transaction. "You don't owe me anything," she'd said. "But I can help," he'd replied. Such simple words. But they'd cracked something open inside her that she'd kept sealed for decades. At 11 o'clock she gave up on sleep and went to her study. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the quiet street below. A mahogany desk held papers and plans and all the detritus of running a $3 billion company. On the walls hung photos of projects she'd completed over 40 years. Bridges, water treatment facilities, transit stations, community centers. But her eyes went to one photo that didn't fit with the others. A frame on her desk. A young woman with Margaret's eyes and her father's smile. Lena Whitmore, dead at 23. Margaret picked up the photo with trembling hands. 33 years and the grief was still fresh, still raw, still capable of bringing her to her knees. Lena had been driving home from a volunteer shift at a homeless shelter. December 23. Light snow. A bridge in rural Maryland with missing guardrails. When her car hit black ice, there was nothing to stop it from sliding over the edge into the river below. The investigation concluded it was an accident. The county admitted the bridge had been slated for repairs but funding had been delayed. They were very sorry for the family's loss. They'd get to those repairs right away. 6 months later the guardrails were finally installed. 6 months too late for Lena. Margaret had thrown herself into work after the funeral. Built her company from the ground up with a singular mission: make sure infrastructure never failed another family the way it had failed hers. She'd built hundreds of projects, employed thousands of people, generated billions in economic activity. But somewhere along the way she'd lost the plot. The company had become about profit instead of purpose, about expansion instead of service, about quarterly earnings instead of community impact. And yesterday she'd sat in a boardroom while her own executives argued against building a bridge that could save lives because it wouldn't make enough money. She'd become what she hated. But Ethan, that 15-year-old boy with a worn backpack and eyes that had seen too much, he'd reminded her what it meant to actually care. Not because it was profitable, not because it looked good, not because someone was watching, just because it was right. Margaret set down Lena's photo and opened her laptop. She typed Ethan Brooks, East Baltimore into a search engine, not sure what she was looking for. No social media profiles appeared, no news articles, no digital footprint that would help her understand this remarkable boy. She called her head of security, waking him up. "Miss Whitmore, is everything all right? I need you to find someone." Ethan Brooks, 15 years old, lives in East Baltimore, attends. She paused, realizing she didn't know which school. Find out which school. Find out about his family situation. Medical history if possible. Financial situation. Everything. "Ma'am, may I ask why?" "Because he saved my life today, and I need to understand who he is." "Yes, ma'am. I'll have information for you by tomorrow evening. Make it tomorrow afternoon, and be discreet. I don't want to scare him or his family." She hung up and stared out the window at the dark street. In her mind she kept hearing Ethan's voice, "But I can help." When was the last time someone had helped her without wanting something in return? When was the last time anyone had looked at her and seen a person instead of a checkbook? Lena would have liked him, Margaret thought, would have recognized a kindred spirit. Her daughter had been like that too, quietly compassionate, helping people without fanfare. She'd volunteered at soup kitchens and homeless shelters, tutored kids in struggling schools, spent her weekends working with Habitat for Humanity instead of partying with college friends. Margaret had been so proud of her, and then she'd been gone, and that pride had curdled into something darker: rage, grief, a desperate need to make the world safer for everyone else's children since she couldn't save her own. But had she succeeded? Had 40 years of building things actually made the world better? Or had she just created another soulless corporation that built infrastructure for rich neighborhoods and ignored poor ones? Yesterday's board meeting had answered that question. Margaret pulled up her company's financial records, project list for the past 5 years, 27 projects, average value $80 million, average location affluent suburbs or commercial districts, projects in low-income neighborhoods too, total investment $12 million. Less than 5% of their capital deployed. She'd failed, completely. She'd built an empire that did exactly what she'd sworn to fight against. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dennis Hammond. "Are you okay? We were worried when you walked out. Please call me." She ignored it. Instead she pulled up the files on the Baltimore Bridge project. The one the board wanted to cancel. $230,000 to build a pedestrian crossing over train tracks in a neighborhood where 3 people had died in 5 years trying to cross. Margaret looked at the cost-benefit analysis Dennis had prepared. Zero return on investment, no revenue generation, no indirect economic benefits that could be measured, just lives saved. She opened a new document and began typing a memo to her executive team. By the time she finished it was 2 in the morning. But she felt more awake than she had in years. The memo was simple: effective immediately. The Baltimore Bridge project will proceed as planned. Full funding approved. I will personally oversee construction. Furthermore, I am establishing a new division within Whitmore Urban Development Group, the Community Infrastructure Initiative. 10% of company profits will be dedicated to building projects in underserved neighborhoods. Projects will be selected based on need, not return on investment. The goal is not to make money but to save lives and improve communities that have been systematically ignored. She hit send and watched it land in a dozen executive inboxes. They'd think she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had, but she didn't care. Tomorrow she'd start looking for Ethan Brooks, not to pay him or make a grand gesture but to understand him, to learn what shaped a 15-year-old into someone who stopped when everyone else walked past. And maybe, just maybe, to remember who she'd been before grief and ambition had calcified her heart. She went to bed thinking about orange juice and metro platforms and a boy who'd said, "But I can help," like it was the simplest thing in the world. Margaret's head of security called at 2 o'clock Friday afternoon. "I have the information you requested on Ethan Brooks. Go ahead." 15 years old, sophomore at Jefferson High School, straight A student, 97th percentile on standardized tests. Lives with his grandmother Ruth Brooks, age 62, in a 5th-floor walk-up in East Baltimore. Father deceased 4 years ago, workplace accident. Mother's whereabouts unknown for approximately 2 years, multiple arrests for drug-related offenses. Margaret's chest tightened. Continue. Ruth Brooks works part-time as a cleaner at Baltimore Medical Center. Severe rheumatoid arthritis, significant joint damage, currently not receiving disability benefits, application pending. Household income approximately $24,000 annually. That's below poverty line for 2 people. Yes, ma'am. Ethan works approximately 25 hours per week at Frank's Auto Garage. Cash payments, no formal employment record. He's been working there for 18 months. He's 15. That's not legal. Technically no, but Frank Moretti, the owner, has a reputation for hiring kids from the neighborhood who need work. He pays fair and doesn't exploit them. By all accounts he's one of the good ones. What else? Rent is $750 per month. They're frequently late but always pay eventually. Utilities current, no significant debt, but also no savings to speak of. Medical expenses for Ruth's condition are substantial even with Medicare. They're treading water financially, one emergency away from disaster. Margaret closed her eyes. What about Ethan's academics? Multiple teachers have flagged him for gifted programs. He's been offered STEM scholarships 3 times in the past year. Declined all of them. The school counselor notes indicate he cited family obligations as the reason. He's sacrificing his future to take care of his grandmother. That would be the assessment, yes. Thank you. Send me the full report. Margaret hung up and sat at her desk, hands folded, thinking. She'd built her fortune through careful analysis and strategic decision-making. But this wasn't a business problem. This was a life. 2 lives, hanging by a thread. She made a decision. Saturday morning, Margaret had James drive her to East Baltimore. She dressed simply. No jewelry except her watch, a modest coat. She didn't want to show up looking like money. The neighborhood shocked her, even though she'd seen the statistics. Boarded up windows, crumbling sidewalks, chain-link fences around empty lots, trash caught in dead grass. A mural on one building showed a young boy's face with the dates of his too short life. Memorial flowers wilted at the base. This was 15 minutes from her Georgetown townhouse. 15 minutes and 1,000 miles. James pulled up outside Ethan's building. The brick facade was crumbling. The front door hung crooked. Graffiti covered the first-floor walls. "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" "I'm sure. Wait here." She climbed 5 flights of stairs, her knees protesting by the 3rd floor. How did Ruth Brooks manage this with severe arthritis? How did she climb these stairs multiple times a day while her joints screamed in agony? Apartment 512. Margaret knocked. Footsteps. The door opened. Ethan stood there in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, surprise clear on his face. "Miss Whitmore." "Hello, Ethan. May I come in?" Yeah, of course." He stepped back, suddenly self-conscious. The apartment was small and worn but meticulously clean. An old couch with a blanket thrown over it. A kitchen table with 2 chairs. Walls that needed paint, but everything in its place. Everything cared for. "Is your grandmother home?" "She's at work. She does a Saturday shift sometimes." Ethan gestured to the couch. "Do you want to sit? Can I get you something? We have water, and I think there's some tea." "Water would be lovely." He brought her a glass and sat in the chair across from the couch, nervous energy radiating from him. "Is everything okay? Are you feeling better?" "I'm fine, thanks to you. That's actually why I'm here." Margaret set down her water. "I wanted to thank you properly, and I wanted to give you something." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was $1,000 in cash. Ethan stared at the envelope like it was a snake. "I can't take that. Please. You spent your time helping me. You missed getting home to your grandmother. Let me compensate you for that." "You don't need to compensate me. I helped because you needed help." "I know, but I want to do this. I don't want money for helping you." Margaret set the envelope on the table between them. "Ethan, I know you work at a garage. I know money is tight. Please don't let pride stop you from accepting help." His jaw tightened. He looked at the envelope and Margaret saw the war happening behind his eyes. Want and need battling with something else, something stronger. "If I take that money," Ethan said slowly, "then what I did on Thursday changes. It stops being about helping someone and becomes about getting paid. I don't want that. But you do need it. That doesn't matter." "Of course it matters." "No." Ethan met her eyes. "It doesn't. My dad used to tell me that character is what you do when nobody's watching and nobody will ever know. If I take money for helping you, then I'm not being a good person anymore. I'm just being a worker. And there's already too much in my life that's about work and money and survival. I need some things to just be about doing right." Margaret felt tears sting her eyes. "You're remarkable. I'm just trying to be decent. Most people aren't. Then most people should try harder." She laughed through her tears. "You sound like my daughter. She used to say things like that. Black and white, right and wrong, no gray areas." "What happened to her?" "She died. A long time ago. A bridge failed and she went into a river and I was in a meeting worrying about profit margins instead of being there." Ethan's face softened. "I'm sorry. So am I. Every day." Margaret picked up the envelope and put it back in her purse. "If you won't take money, will you accept help in other ways?" "What kind of help?" "I looked into your situation. I know about your grandmother's arthritis. I know you work 25 hours a week while maintaining straight A's. I know you've turned down scholarship opportunities because you're afraid to leave her." Ethan's expression closed off. "You investigated me. I wanted to understand who you are. You had no right to do that." "You're absolutely correct. I apologize." Margaret leaned forward. "But now that I do understand, I can't walk away. I have resources. I can help make your situation better without you feeling like it's charity." "How?" "Let me think about it. But please, don't shut the door on possibilities. Sometimes accepting help is the strongest thing you can do. My dad never accepted help. He said men provide for their families. Your father died working too much." Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "I don't mean disrespect. I'm sure he was a good man, but martyrdom isn't noble. It's just sad. And leaving you and your grandmother struggling isn't the legacy he would have wanted." Ethan looked away, jaw working. "You should go." "All right, but I'm leaving my number." She pulled out a card and set it on the table. "If you change your mind, if you need anything, if you want to talk, call me, please." She stood and walked to the door, paused, turned back. "Thank you," she said, "for Thursday, for reminding me what it means to actually care about people. You changed my life that day, Ethan. Whether you accept help or not, I want you to know that." She left before he could respond, climbed back down the 5 flights of stairs, got in the SUV where James waited. "How did it go?" he asked. "He refused the money." "I'm sorry, ma'am." "Don't be." "He refused for the right reasons." Margaret looked out the window at the broken neighborhood. "He's extraordinary, truly extraordinary." "What now?" "Now I figure out how to help someone who won't accept help, and I do it in a way that doesn't compromise his dignity or change why he helped me in the first place." "That's a tall order." "Yes, but I've been building things for 40 years. I think I can figure this one out." As they drove away, Margaret thought about Ethan sitting in that apartment alone, about the envelope full of money he'd refused even though he desperately needed it, about the choice he'd made to protect what mattered most. Not the money but the meaning. Lena would have done the same thing, would have refused payment for helping someone because accepting it would have tainted the act. Margaret pulled out her phone and made a call. "Dennis, it's me. I need you to pull together a team. We're creating a new scholarship program, specifically for students in underserved communities who show exceptional talent but have family obligations that prevent them from pursuing traditional paths. Full tuition, room, board and stipends for family support. I want it operational in 30 days. "Margaret, that's ambitious. I don't care. Make it happen. And don't use my name on it. Call it the Lena Whitmore Scholarship Fund." She'd have wanted it to help kids like Ethan Brooks. Kids like who? "You'll see. Just make it happen." She hung up and looked out the window as they crossed back into Georgetown. The landscape changed from decay to prosperity in the space of 10 blocks. Same city, different worlds. She was going to build a bridge between those worlds. Not a literal bridge of concrete and steel, though she'd build those too. A bridge made of opportunity, made of hope, made of the belief that where you started didn't have to determine where you ended up. Ethan Brooks had saved her life on a metro platform. Now she was going to return the favor, even if he didn't want her to, even if he fought her every step of the way, because that's what you did for people who mattered. You helped them whether they made it easy or not. Monday morning, Ethan woke at 4:55 like always, made breakfast from almost nothing, counted out his grandmother's pills, started the coffee maker with grounds they'd been reusing for 3 days. He was pouring coffee when he heard it. Engines, multiple engines, loud and idling right outside their building. He went to the window and looked down. His stomach dropped. 3 black SUVs were parked at the curb. Dark windows, government plates, men in suits standing beside them talking into radios. "Ethan." His grandmother's voice came from behind him, shaky with fear. "Baby, what's happening?" "I don't know." "Are those police?" "I don't think so." "FBI." "Immigration." "Grandma, we're citizens." "Immigration doesn't." "Then what do they want?" The intercom buzzed. A voice crackled through. "Ethan Brooks, we need to speak with you. Please come downstairs." Ruth grabbed his arm with her twisted fingers. "Don't go down there. Don't open the door. If I don't go, they'll just come up." "Ethan, what did you do?" Did you get in a fight at school? Did you steal something? I didn't do anything wrong. Then why are they here? The intercom buzzed again. Mr. Brooks, we're not here to cause trouble. We just need to speak with you. It's regarding Miss Margaret Whitmore. Ethan and Ruth looked at each other. The lady you helped? Ruth asked. Yeah. Why would she send government people? I don't know. Ethan went to the intercom. I'll be down in 5 minutes. He pulled on jeans and a clean shirt, his hands shaking. Ruth followed him to the door. I'm coming with you. Grandma, your knees. I don't care about my knees. You're not facing those people alone. They descended the 5 flights of stairs together, Ruth leaning heavily on the railing, Ethan supporting her elbow. By the time they reached the ground floor, Ethan's heart was hammering and his mouth was dry. He opened the front door. The men in suits turned. One of them stepped forward holding up identification. Ethan Brooks, yes, I'm Robert Morrison from Whitmore Foundation. These are my associates. We're not law enforcement. We're not here to cause any trouble. Miss Whitmore asked us to deliver a message to you. Ethan's fear shifted to confusion. A message? She'd like to meet with you. Today if possible. We have a car to take you to her office. I have school. We've contacted your school. They're aware you'll be absent for a family matter. You called my school. Miss Whitmore wanted to make sure there were no complications. Ruth stepped forward, one hand on Ethan's shoulder. Who exactly is this Margaret Whitmore? What does she want with my grandson? Ma'am, I can't discuss details, but I assure you your grandson is not in any trouble. Miss Whitmore simply wants to speak with him about a personal matter, and if he says no, then we leave and don't bother him again. But Miss Whitmore was very hopeful he'd agree to meet. Ethan looked at his grandmother. At the fear in her eyes mixed with something else, confusion, concern, but also curiosity. I'll go, Ethan said. Baby, you don't have to. It's okay. I think I know what this is about. What? I helped her on the metro last week. She wanted to give me money and I said no. Maybe she wants to try again. If she's sending 3 cars and men in suits, she wants more than to give you money. Ruth said. She was right. But Ethan couldn't walk away without knowing what this was about. What Margaret Whitmore wanted with him. Why she'd sent an entire team to find him. I'll go, he said to Morrison. But I need to be back by 3. I have work. We'll have you back in plenty of time. Ruth hugged him hard, her twisted fingers clutching his shirt. You call me if anything feels wrong. Anything at all. I will. I promise. He climbed into one of the SUVs. The interior was leather and smelled expensive. Morrison sat across from him. Would you like anything? Water? Coffee? I'm fine. They drove through the city, Ethan watching the neighborhoods change from poor to prosperous. 20 minutes later they pulled up to a gleaming office building downtown. 42 stories of glass and steel, the kind of building Ethan had only seen from a distance. They took him to the 38th floor. The elevator opened onto a reception area with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. A woman in a business suit smiled at him. Mr. Brooks, Miss Whitmore is waiting for you. Right this way. She led him down a hallway to a conference room. Margaret sat at a large table, papers spread before her. She stood when he entered. Ethan, thank you for coming. You sent 3 SUVs, that's kind of hard to say no to. I apologize if we scared you. I wanted to make sure you'd actually agree to meet. You could have just called. You would have said no. She was right. He would have. Margaret gestured to a chair. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Breakfast? You probably didn't have time to eat. I'm not hungry. Ethan, I know you barely eat. Don't lie to me. He sat down, suddenly exhausted. What do you want, Miss Whitmore? I want to help you, and before you refuse again, I want you to hear me out completely. Can you do that? I guess. Margaret sat across from him. I'm 71 years old. I've been building things for 40 years, bridges, water systems, transit stations. I've made a lot of money and employed a lot of people, but I've also failed in fundamental ways. I built a company that became more interested in profit than purpose. And last week, when I collapsed on that metro platform, I was at the lowest point of my life. I just walked out of a board meeting where we voted against building a bridge that could save lives, because it wouldn't make us any money. Ethan listened, saying nothing. And then you stopped. Margaret continued. You helped me when no one else would. You refused money because accepting it would have changed what you did. And you reminded me why I started my company in the first place. Not to make money, not to build an empire, to build things that help people. I still don't want money, Ethan said. I know, so I'm not offering money, I'm offering opportunity. She slid a folder across the table. Open it. Ethan opened the folder. Inside was a letter on official foundation letterhead. He read slowly, his eyes widening with each paragraph. Full scholarship to any accredited 4-year university. Room and board included. Monthly stipend for living expenses. Medical care for his grandmother including home health aides. A part-time consulting position on the Baltimore Bridge project. Paid at professional rates. Summer internship opportunities. This is too much, Ethan said. It's not enough, but it's a start. Why would you do this? Because you're extraordinary. Because you have talent that shouldn't be wasted working at a garage. Because you're exactly the kind of person who should become an engineer. Margaret leaned forward. And because I'm sick, Ethan. I have cancer. Stage 4. The doctors give me maybe a year, maybe less, and I want to spend whatever time I have left doing things that actually matter. Ethan felt like he'd been punched. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, just say yes. Let me help you become who you're meant to be. My grandmother will be taken care of. Medical care, home health aides, whatever she needs. You won't have to worry about her while you're studying. But the money isn't charity. This scholarship is merit-based. You earned it by being brilliant and hard-working. The consulting position on the bridge is real work that I genuinely need your help with. I've seen your drawings, Ethan. He froze. How? Your geometry teacher mentioned you sketch in class. I asked to see some of your work. Your pedestrian bridge design is remarkable. Professional level thinking from a 15-year-old. I want you to help my team refine the Baltimore Bridge design. You see problems they miss. You understand the community's needs because you live there. Ethan looked down at the folder, at the letter promising things he'd never dared to dream about. His hands were shaking. I'm scared, he admitted. Of what? Of taking this and failing, of leaving my grandmother and something going wrong, of changing my whole life based on promises from someone I barely know. Those are all reasonable fears, Margaret said gently. But let me ask you something. If you don't take this opportunity, what happens? You work at the garage forever, support your grandmother on minimum wage, watch your potential die because you're too afraid to take a chance. I'd be safe. You'd be trapped. There's a difference. She stood and walked to the window looking out over the city. My daughter died because I played it safe. I was in a meeting instead of being with her. I chose work over life, over love, and I've spent 33 years trying to make up for that choice. Don't make the same mistake. Don't choose safety over possibility. Ethan closed the folder, opened it again. Read the letter one more time. I need to talk to my grandmother. Of course, take the folder home, discuss it with her. But Ethan, Margaret turned back to face him. I'm not trying to save you. You don't need saving. I'm just trying to open a door that should have been open all along. What you do with it is your choice. But please at least walk through and see what's on the other side. Morrison drove him home. The SUVs had left, but neighbors still watched from windows as Ethan got out and climbed the stairs to his apartment. His grandmother was waiting at the door. What happened? Ethan handed her the folder. Read this. Ruth read slowly, her bent fingers struggling to hold the pages. When she finished, tears were streaming down her face. Baby, this is everything. Everything we've needed. I know. So why do you look so scared? Because if I say yes, everything changes. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. You've been ready your whole life, you just didn't have the chance. She pulled him into a hug. Your daddy would want you to say yes. He'd want you to take this opportunity and not look back. But what if something happens to you while I'm away? Then it happens. I'm 62 years old, baby. Something's going to happen eventually. But I'd rather die knowing you're living your dream than live knowing you gave it up for me. Ethan held his grandmother and felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Say yes and risk everything. Say no and stay safe in a life that was slowly crushing him. In his mind he saw the notebook under his bed. The bridges and drainage systems and intersection designs. All the dreams he'd been too afraid to dream. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid. Maybe it was time to walk through the door Margaret Whitmore was holding open. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do it. Ruth pulled back and looked at him. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She smiled through her tears. That's my boy. 3 weeks later, Ethan sat in Margaret Whitmore's private office for the first time. It was smaller than the conference room, more personal. photos on the walls of bridges and buildings, a shelf full of architecture books, and on her desk one framed photo of a young woman with kind eyes. "That's Lena," Margaret said, noticing him looking. "My daughter. She looks like you. She was better than me. Kinder, more patient. She would have liked you." They sat across from each other, the scholarship paperwork spread between them. Ethan had signed the initial documents, accepted the offer, started the process of enrolling at Johns Hopkins for the summer engineering program, then applying to full universities for the following year. It still didn't feel real. "How's your grandmother?" Margaret asked. "Good, better actually. The home health aide you arranged came yesterday." Ruth cried when she left. Happy tears. "Yeah, someone helped her shower without paying for the first time in months. She couldn't believe it." Margaret smiled. "Good, that's what this is for. All of it. I still don't understand why you're doing this. Because you helped me when I needed it. And because I'm dying, and I want my last year to mean something." She said it simply without drama. "Just a fact. How are you feeling?" "Tired. The treatments help some but not enough. I'm on borrowed time, Ethan. But that's okay. I've had a long life. A good life, mostly. And now I get to end it doing something that actually matters. Building the bridge. Building many bridges. Not just in Baltimore. I'm starting a new initiative. The Lena Whitmore Community Infrastructure Fund. 10% of my company's profits dedicated to building projects in underserved neighborhoods. Bridges, drainage systems, safe crosswalks. All the things you've been drawing in that notebook. Ethan's face flushed. "You really did see my drawings. Your geometry teacher made copies. I hope that's okay. I guess. They're brilliant, Ethan. Truly. You see problems with fresh eyes. You design solutions that prioritize people over profit. That's exactly the kind of engineer the world needs more of." They spent the next hour going over details. The summer program started in 6 weeks. Ethan would live on campus but could come home on weekends. His consulting work on the Baltimore Bridge would begin immediately. Margaret wanted his input on the final design before construction started. "There's one more thing," Margaret said as the meeting wrapped up. "I'm setting up a broader scholarship program. Not just for you, for other students like you. Kids who have talent but face barriers, family obligations, financial hardship. The usual things that trap smart kids in poor neighborhoods. That's amazing. I need your help designing it. You understand what students need better than anyone in my company. Will you consult on that too? You're going to pay me to help create a scholarship program. I'm going to pay you to provide expert advice on a subject you understand intimately. That's consulting. Say yes." Ethan laughed, the first real laugh he'd had in weeks. "Yes, okay, yes, good. Now go home, hug your grandmother, do your homework, be a kid for once." "I'll try." At the door Ethan turned back. "Miss Whitmore, thank you for all of this. I know I said I didn't want charity, but this isn't charity. This is investment. I'm investing in your future because I believe you're going to build things that matter. That's not charity. That's smart business. Still, thank you. You're welcome. Now go. I have 12 meetings this afternoon and they're all boring. At least let me enjoy 5 minutes of peace first." Ethan left smiling. 6 months passed. The summer program at Johns Hopkins was intense and thrilling. Ethan learned more in 8 weeks than he'd learned in 2 years of high school. Structural engineering principles, materials science, urban planning theory, computer-aided design software. He absorbed it all like a sponge, staying up late working on projects, asking questions that made his professors pause and think. The Baltimore Bridge took shape through the fall. Ethan visited the construction site twice a week after school, hard hat on his head, notebook in his hand. The lead engineer, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, treated him like a colleague instead of a kid. She listened to his suggestions, incorporated his ideas, told him he had a future in this field if he wanted it. He wanted it. God, he wanted it. His grandmother's health improved with proper medical care. The home health aide came 3 times a week. Ruth attended a support group for people with arthritis. She even started volunteering at the community center, reading to children at the after-school program. She was happy, actually happy. Margaret's health declined through the winter. The cancer was aggressive. She spent less time at the office, more time at home or in the hospital. But she never complained. She just kept working on her projects, determined to see them through. On a cold day in February, Ethan got a call at school. Margaret had been hospitalized. Wasn't expected to last the week. She was asking for him. He left school immediately and took the metro to the hospital. Found her room. She looked so small in the bed, skin pale, eyes tired, but she smiled when she saw him. "Hey kid, hey." He sat in the chair by her bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dying." "Because I am." She laughed weakly. "But that's okay. I've made peace with it." "I haven't." "You will. It takes time." She reached for his hand. "I wanted to see you one more time, to tell you something important." "What?" "You didn't just help me on that metro platform. You saved me, not from passing out, from losing myself completely. You reminded me why any of this matters, why we build things, why we care about people, why being rich means nothing if you're dead inside. You were never dead inside. I was getting there, but you pulled me back." She squeezed his hand weakly. "So thank you for being exactly who you are, for stopping when everyone else walked past, for being brave enough to help a stranger. You helped me too. You changed my whole life." "No, I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it. You're going to do amazing things, Ethan. You're going to build bridges and help communities and make the world better. I won't be here to see it, but I know it's true." They talked for another hour, about engineering, about dreams, about her daughter Lena and his father Michael, about loss and hope and the strange ways lives intersect. As Ethan stood to leave, Margaret said one more thing. "The ripple effect. You know what that is, when you drop something in water and the rings spread out." "Exactly. You helped me. I helped you. You're going to help others. They'll help more people. And on and on. That's how the world gets better. Not through grand gestures, through small acts of kindness that ripple outward forever." She smiled. "You started ripples that day, Ethan. Don't ever stop." Margaret Whitmore died 3 days later. Her funeral was enormous. Politicians, business leaders, community organizers from neighborhoods she'd helped. Ethan gave a eulogy that made grown men cry. "Margaret Whitmore didn't save me," he said. "She just helped me save myself. And she taught me that's what we're supposed to do for each other. Open doors, light paths, make it possible for people to become who they're meant to be." That's her legacy. Not the buildings or the bridges or the billions of dollars. It's the lives she changed by simply paying attention to people everyone else ignored. The Baltimore Bridge was completed that spring. They dedicated it on a Saturday morning in May. The mayor was there, city council members, local residents, news cameras. They unveiled a plaque, the Margaret Whitmore Memorial Bridge, built for a community that was too long ignored, dedicated to a woman who believed in building things that matter. Ethan stood at the center of the bridge as people crossed. Mothers with strollers, old men with canes, teenagers on bikes. The bridge was beautiful and functional and safe. It would serve this community for 50 years, maybe longer. And he'd helped design it. A 15-year-old kid from East Baltimore had contributed ideas that were now built in steel and concrete. It was real. It was helping people. It mattered. 3 years later, Ethan graduated from high school as valedictorian. He gave a speech about ripples and choices, and the importance of helping others even when it's inconvenient. "A year ago," he said, "I helped a stranger on a metro platform. I didn't think it was a big deal. But that stranger changed my life. She taught me that one moment of kindness can create ripples that spread farther than we can imagine. So I challenge all of us, classmates, teachers, families, to be people who create ripples. To stop when we see someone who needs help. To choose compassion over convenience. To believe that small actions matter because they do. They really, really do." He went to Johns Hopkins on a full scholarship, studied civil engineering, made the dean's list every semester, won awards for his designs, got internships at top firms. But his favorite work was with the Lena Whitmore Community Infrastructure Fund. He consulted on projects in poor neighborhoods, helped design bridges and drainage systems and safe crossings, built things that helped people who'd been ignored. His grandmother lived to see him graduate college. She died peacefully 6 months later, her hand still twisted but her heart full. She'd seen her grandson become an engineer. She'd seen him build things that mattered. She'd seen his ripples spreading outward. On a Tuesday afternoon 2 years after graduation, Ethan was riding the metro home from work. He was a junior engineer now at a firm that specialized in urban infrastructure. His notebook full of drawings had become actual projects. His dreams had become real. The train was crowded, evening rush hour. People packed in, staring at phones, lost in their own worlds. Ethan noticed the teenage girl because she was swaying. Pale face, unfocused eyes, hand reaching for the pole but missing. She started to fall. Ethan moved immediately, caught her arm, helped her sit, asked if anyone had juice or soda. A woman handed him a bottle of apple juice. He gave it to the girl, small sips, steady voice. "You're okay, I've got you, just breathe." Around them the metro hummed on. People noticed, then looked away, stepped around them, kept moving. The world continued spinning while one person stopped to help another. The girl's name was Ashley. She was 16, hadn't eaten since breakfast, was working 2 jobs to help her mom pay rent, was scared and tired and alone. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to thank me. This is just what you do." He stayed with her until her mother arrived, made sure she was safe. Then he got back on the train and continued home. He didn't think much about it. It was just the right thing to do, just being a decent person, just creating one more ripple in an ocean of small kindnesses. But that night, Ashley told her mother what happened. Her mother told their neighbor. The neighbor told her book club. Someone posted about it on social media. The story spread. And somewhere in the city another person read it and thought, "I should be more like that. I should help when I see someone who needs it." Another ripple spreading outward. The world got better one choice at a time, one moment at a time, one person stopping when everyone else walked past. That was the legacy. That was the point. That was everything. And it all started on a metro platform when a 15-year-old boy saw a woman falling and decided to stay.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.